Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Ways and Means City Council hearing on 22-0235, the ordinance of estimates. Oh, Mr. Chair, you want to take it from here? Okay. I'm Odette Ramos on the 14th District. We also have Ryan Dorsey from the 3rd District and Chairman Costello from the 11th District. Today we're going to hear from the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. And how many slides do you have? Do you have?
I think we have
3. You've got 3 slides. Okay, great. Perfect. We could talk about this, I think, for hours, but we only have 30 minutes. So Director Moore, thank you so much for joining us. If you could introduce yourself and those who are with you, that would be wonderful. And then use the microphone, please. So grab the microphone when you're speaking and take it away.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman Ramos, Councilman Dorsey, and Chair Costello. My name is Dana Peterson Moore. I am the Director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights and also the city's Chief Equity Officer. With me in Council Chamber is our Chief of Staff, Khadijah Fairmont, and I believe we might have some staff in the balcony expecting Karan Watkins. We are coming
no, there's nobody up there.
Not there.
Right
She'll be in.
Okay.
We are coming to you from being out on the front doing the law department's DEI event, which kudos.
That's right. And so you had double duty today.
Yes, that's why I'm wearing sneakers.
Right. That's okay.
So I could run around.
Well, thanks for doing that. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely, and it was just tremendous. I don't know if you know, London Richelieu has given the council kudos and thanks, and I join in your confirming her. She's tremendous. Good afternoon.
Yes, so, we're excited to work with her.
Yeah, very good. So the Office of Equity and Civil Rights is seeking your approval of an overall budget of $3,321,569. This represents a 16% increase over our fiscal year 2022 budget. That comes to $480,000 and $480,373. The increase is driven by the addition of 2 new full-time employees for the equity division. And I lift that up because Mayor Scott is, I believe, the first mayor to actually fund new positions in the Office of Equity and Civil Rights. We've had mandates that were unfunded. These are funded, and we are delighted. Mm-hmm. So I don't think I need to go into what the Office of Equity and Civil Rights is in specific terms, but generally for anyone who's listening that's not familiar, we are the city's civil rights agency. Our mission, excuse me, is to carry out activities that make Baltimore equitable, to eliminate discrimination, and to protect individuals' civil rights. We house 4 commissions, 1 board, and 1 division. They are the Wage Commission, Community Relations Commission, the newly revamped and revitalized Women's Commission, the Civilian Review Board, Mayor's Commission on Disabilities, and the Office of Equity. What have we been doing since we were here last year? I want to lift up especially the Women's Commission. That is coming back. It's revived. We are in the process now of interviewing candidates. Special thanks to Councilwoman Sharon Green Middleton, who really was a real driver in this coming back, and she's been tremendous in helping us move forward. Councilwoman Felicia Porter, Councilwoman, good afternoon, Daniel McCrae, for actually assisting us in interviewing board candidates. All that I'm hearing, we had more than 60 candidates apply for just 19 positions. And it's going to be difficult to decide because all of the candidates have been just tremendous. As I go along, I want to recognize Kaylin Young, who's the Deputy Director, Lisa Kelly, who's our Chief of Investigations. And let me pause there. When I was here last year, you all urged that we tighten up how we do our investigations, and I heard you. I want you to know that I heard you. Went back to the office, established a Chief of Investigations position. Through a difficult process, we selected Lisa Kelly, who was at the time our supervisor of Community Relations Commission. We promoted her, and she is doing exactly what you all had asked that we do, and that is really elevating the work of investigations, streamlining how we do it, having some some standards, higher standards of how we do investigations and how we do our reports. And it's working. She does training every other week for our investigators on how to do what they do. She's so good, I really kind of don't want to talk about it because I don't want her to get scooped up.
Stolen, right.
But she could train, all investigations across the city. We also finally have in place our equity data analyst. That's Jordan Berry. He's just been with us, I think, 3 weeks. He has, as a prime responsibility, establishing a dashboard that is going to look at equity initiatives across the city. He will be diving into every single agency. I want the agencies to hear this now. We're coming to ask for your help and your collaboration as we pull equity data, demographics about what's actually happening in our agencies to stand up and advance equity. It will be a living, breathing dashboard, so look out for that. I also hired an assistant chief equity officer, that's Karan Watkins. This work is never ending, it's very demanding, and Karan has been tremendous in helping us make sure that we stay on point with the equity initiatives.
Great choice.
She's tremendous, she really is. We are back doing education and outreach. We had our table at the law department event. We are going around the city. We've been invited to a lot of the senior citizen residences, and we say yes to everything that has anything to do, that looks like it has anything to do with our office. So we're out fully staffing the outreach as long as we can. The office is restructuring. We have created some new positions. We've moved positions around. I've been very robust in hiring new people to do this work. We are now at a point where we're about 50% people that were there when I arrived and 50% that I hired. So that strongly suggests to me it's time to have a full staff retreat. So we will be doing that at the end of the month. In person, we will be, I don't think I'm sharing any secrets. We're going to start with yoga and just really get centered. And we're going to end with a facilitated conversation about how do we relate to one another. And I'm really excited about that. Last year, we did our annual report in 5 languages: French, Spanish, English, Mandarin, Chinese, and Braille. We believe that we are the first agency to actually do that. And this year, with Karan taking lead, we reviewed, Councilman Costello, every page of the budget, reviewing it for equity to see are there things that lift up that we should be concerned about. Of course, you all know that the Civilian Review Board is changing. I won't go into that too much because we're not real sure exactly what's going to happen, but we know that it's changing, that we're going to be bringing in the PAB. Community relations is very strong. Right now, we're being led by Danielle Burton, who's our lead investigator. We are issuing subpoenas, and we are holding people's feet to the fire. We are bringing them in to talk about what they did or didn't do. Again, the equity division, we've increased the number of equity coordinators within each agency. We hold office hours every other week, every third week. We are constantly being asked by agencies and private entities to partner. We say yes to all of it. My view is Baltimore City agencies can be as equitable as possible, but it's even better when our partner, signature institutions across the city are with us, so we say yes. We are training as many people as we can. That's not as fast as we want it to be, but we've trained all the equity coordinators. Of course, we trained all of the mayor's cabinet, and now training is happening in agencies just through leadership of the equity coordinators. We've formalized the ADA coordinator meetings. And with respect to the Wage Commission, for the first time in many, many, many years, way too long, we applied an equity lens to the prevailing wage and realized that laborers had not had an increase in far too long. And although nobody was advocating that they be increased, my team understood that we are the advocates for the underserved. We are the advocates for those who have been too long overlooked. And laborers, in my view, were too long overlooked. So we, on our own initiative, increased those wages, and we were really delighted when the mayor agreed and endorsed that. Here's the overview.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. I just want to acknowledge that Councilwoman Felicia Porter from the 10th District has joined us. So I have a couple of questions, and I'll open it up to the rest of the committee. My question to pretty much every agency: how many people in your in the front facing that work with residents or Spanish speaking?
We have in my. Are you saying in every agency or in mine?
In yours.
3. We have 3 that are fluent in Spanish. In fact, we were delighted when we realized that there was a problem or a challenge translating the paperwork for the guaranteed income. And we volunteered to take all of those documents to review them, and we actually made changes that made them much simpler. Easier to understand for Spanish speakers. We also, of course, have contracts with translators that can translate ASL and other languages. We have a lot of French-speaking, Mandarin Chinese, across the city, so
Yeah.
we're determined to service everybody.
That's great. That's wonderful. I appreciate that. And you had mentioned that you have your equity data analyst. One of the things that Councilman Stokes talks about a lot is each agency has an equity person or is getting an equity person. Each agency is looking at equity kind of differently. So hopefully your data analyst will be working with them so that we're all kind of singing from the same song.
So there's 2 ways to look at it. There's some baseline equity concerns that everyone needs to be aware of,
Sure.
and that we talk about when we have our equity coordinator meetings. Everybody needs to be looking at their documents and looking at the inequities that are in our governing documents. But equity in the health department could be different than equity in the police department. And we're not looking, I think it's a mistake to say one size fits all, because
Okay.
agencies do different things.
Sure.
And so, but what we do ask is that there be a lot of attention paid to hiring. There be a lot of attention paid to real inclusion, really bringing staff in, to listening. Now, it sounds weird, but listening to the voices of the silent, the ones that don't talk that much,
Sure.
but have a whole lot to say. So pulling them in. One of the things we talked about, earlier today is doing more with LGBTQ and organizing our LGBTQ employees. So that needs to happen in every agency, and the agency coordinators, the equity coordinators are really at the forefront of that. We will be issuing soon, sort of a, equity trackers. We're going to issue, it's too late for this year, but we want to create a budget book that really shows agencies how to look at their budget from an equity lens. There are a lot of resources out there. And in talking about this, I found that different agencies were doing different things. But we need one toolkit. There will be one toolkit for budget, and there will be one toolkit for how to assess some of these baseline equity mandates. So that is coming.
Yeah, that's really great. I mean, that's super important, because I think you and I have also discussed where we as council members also have to be intentional, because the communities that need us most are not dialing 311.
No, they're not.
They're just not.
No.
So we then have to we have to be there. We then do the 311s, or we have to be there. But the agencies have to also figure out how they're going to address those issues, even without all the 311s, right? The 311 is the data, but again, the communities that need us most aren't using it, and mostly because of distrust.
I'm stuttering not because I doubt it. I want to respond responsibly. When I say this, it's a distrust that we earned.
Oh, for sure, no question.
As a city, as a community at
question.
large, we earned it over many, 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 many years, many administrations. Let's go back, decades. And I don't, somebody asked me to please stop talking about redlining, and I said, look at me.
You can.
Look at me. I will never stop talking
That's
about
right.
redlining, because we're still living with it.
That's right.
So we have a lot of work to do, and one of the things that the city administrator suggested that we do is just sort of how to respond when we do go to 911 calls, 311 calls, when agencies do respond. How do we respond? Is there some basics that we can employ to make sure that we bring in really the people on the fringes that are watching, but they're not talking, and we need to bring them in because they know so much more about what's happening in their community.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm glad you mentioned the city administrator. City Administrator Shorter is here.
Oh.
Thank you
Oh,
for
is he?
coming. He's here.
Hi.
He sneaks
City
in,
Administrator.
so we have to make sure that everybody knows. We're grateful for all the time that you've been spending with us. Councilwoman, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Councilman Dorsey, do you have any questions?
I do have a couple questions on behalf of Councilman Burnett.
Yes, great.
Hi.
Oh, that smile.
Because I love you. Oh no. So I want to ask you about restitution. I'm sorry. Did this restitution issue come up already?
No, it has not. Go ahead.
Okay, great.
Not-
The budget has a performance metric for percentage of restitution and penalty collected, and below the performance metrics, a bullet point that says the fiscal 2021 actual for percentage of restitution and penalty collected was low as investigators were assessing the backlog of late payroll and complex cases. This is Greek to me. I don't understand what this means. And the question from Councilman Burnett is, why is the percentage of restitution and penalties collected so low consistently? And what is your office doing proactively to address this failure?
Okay, sure.
I don't like to use the word failure, but that's what he wrote.
Oh, whatever word you want to use is fine with us. What we
Shortcoming.
focus on is solutions.
Yeah.
So when Khadijah and I joined the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, there was a backlog of complaints and penalties, and we are told, we didn't see it for, well, I actually saw it because I did a tour in 2020 or 2019, but there was a backlog of complaints and unpaid wage claims that were from floor almost to mid-ceiling. And it existed because of, in my 2020 vision or view, there was leadership that allowed it to happen. There wasn't the concerted, focused on how to move the backlog, how to actually manage the paper. A lot of it was done by paper. And since we really got started in April 2021, we started looking at what's actually happening day to day in this office and how are things happening and how are things not happening, and made changes. One of the things that we did do, we have a new supervisor for wage, and she has changed how we collect penalties. She is a little more proactive in sending out communications and letting employers know and letting businesses know, you owe this much. And in the time I've been there, we get checks in every single day for collecting the penalties. We've also, finally, we are moving together with the law department and MBU to institute, we call it B2G now, which is a data-driven system that will, in real time, collect data about what are the jobs that are happening with city contracts, who's doing that work, what are the wages that are supposed to be paid, how many employees are there. We're going to get real data. It's all computerized, and we'll be able to move far more rapidly, and we expect penalty collections to increase. We're better now. We're better in 2022 than we were.
All right, so we have a better technological approach to requesting or to notifying of the penalties that are due. Is that backlog of a stack of papers half a room high, is that gone?
It's gone.
It's gone.
Yeah,
So all
it's
of that
gone.
was digitized, I guess, or is the intake process changed?
Yes.
Hopefully it's no longer a paper thing that's going to result in stacks of paper.
There's still some paper. There's still some, we're not where we need to be. Our new supervisor is Araceli Stafford, and she is working with MBU and the law department to bring on board that digitization and the computerized approach. So we don't have a backlog today.
Okay. Do you have offhand a sense of how many cases that backlog was?
It was substantial, and I can give you.
Hundreds? Thousands?
Oh, I don't think it was thousands, and
it was
I don't know if it was even hundreds, but I will get you exact numbers, and if you'll allow, I can send you a memo or however you all want your follow-up information.
We'll make a formal request.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's see. So,
Nina, did you, go ahead, repeat it again, please.
yeah, well, so I'm almost there.
Okay.
Yeah, because this says we had a target and some actual numbers for 2021 for number of complaints and violations. And so that gives me a sense of about how many we had coming in. It looks like there was a significant increase in the number of violations and complaints that came in 2020 in particular. What is that? That's almost a five-fold or a four-fold increase over the previous year, right? It went from 315 in 2019 to 1,717. That's a significant jump, but actual 21 was back into 549.
So 2019 was really driven by one employer,
Uh-huh.
which was the Baltimore Arena,
Ah,
Wow.
Royal Farms Arena,
Wow.
and those were resolved in I believe 2020 or 2021, right as I was leaving the law department.
so
Those were
like in
resolved.
bulk.
Sorry, yeah, I mean,
Is that do we have bulk cases like that fairly commonly?
that's not common, that's uncommon.
Hmm.
And that is a problem that existed for a number of years that the Office of Equity and Civil Rights discovered there was a problem. What we're talking about in that case was not paying support staff, the cleaning staff, y'all gonna get me on my bandwagon, but it's
No,
the neediest,
okay,
the
okay,
neediest of
okay.
people were not being paid. They were not being paid a living wage, and we both taught them that they must pay the living wage and educated them that they were not exempt from paying that wage.
All right, so I feel like we've got an answer to the question here, which is basically, why has the restitution been so low, collections been so low, and what are you doing? I got an answer to that.
Okay.
That's the real question there.
Okay.
But then once those penalties are collected, help me understand this. These are wage theft
Yes.
violations.
Yes.
And you are informing the employers that we have found you to be in violation of a wage theft law, and you owe your employees some difference that that is not made up, and you owe a penalty.
Yes. Yes.
The penalty goes to the employee, or it comes to you? It
Right.
comes to the city. And what happens with that money?
Well,
General fund?
oh, that guy across the hall loves that it comes to the general fund.
Uh-huh.
We wish that it came to the Office of
Okay.
Equity and Civil Rights. But no, we make sure, and this is really important, we make sure that every employee gets paid the back wages that they're entitled to.
Do they get paid I'm just not that familiar with the law. Do they get paid back wages plus some penalty, or
So the law allows us to collect back wages and treble damages. So you get the back wage and triple the amount that's owed. And I don't know that we always collect that, but we always make sure that they get paid the wages that they were entitled to. So and they get a check. And there's,
that's for, and treble damages, you say? If it's collected, they get money?
that would not come to us.
Plus, there's
Plus
a penalty
the
that comes to
penalty.
you.
And it's important to, we compromise on the penalty. And I don't always feel that we should, and I'm not here to make an announcement, but I know that people watch, and I discourage compromise on the penalty. Because it's a mathematical calculation. It's known in advance that if you don't pay, this is what the cost is. But we often do compromise on that. So,
That's a law department issue, right?
Well, it's actually it's an issue that resides in the Office of Equity and Civil Rights in our wage division. And we sometimes bring in the law department. We have brought in the law department when there was, fierce dispute and, the potential for litigation. That hasn't happened that often. Most often, employers understand that this is something that they need to take care of.
Okay, so we have a concern, I have a concern here, and I'm going to ask for more information about this. I have a concern about penalties being waived or compromised. I also am interested to know more about the inconsistency of collection of treble damages.
Right, and I'm backing off on saying treble damages because I don't know, and I don't want to present something to you that I'm not 100% certain.
Okay.
So I will get certainty on that. I don't know that we collect treble damages, but I do know that we collect the actual amount that is due every employee.
Okay, so I'm going to ask for what you would consider a complete explanation of reasonable and relevant concerns relating to treble damages and penalty compromise.
Sure.
I don't know that I need to try to be more nitpicky about how I put it.
I understand what you...
I trust that you understand what I
do.
mean.
I do.
I just want to make sure, Sophia, Nate,
Written explanation.
good?
And we can
Yeah.
You can finesse it.
stop
from
there.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
I know what you want.
How soon do you think, I imagine that you have to do some collaboration with law department staff in order to do that? You got this covered? How long?
Give us 1 week.
I'm going to give you a week.
Okay,
Close of
thank you.
business next Friday, week from today.
Super. Thank you.
Okay,
very much.
great. I have some other questions for Councilman Burnett, but if there's anybody else.
Oh, you can ask another one.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so on here, we have the dollar value of restitution and penalties. How much was paid to wage theft victims in restitution for FY21 and FY22?
So I don't have it broken out for FY22. The total to date settlement and restitution is $49,659.60. For FY21, it looks like for FY21 it was $1,436,247, and that is restitution and penalties. And we should be able to break out how much is restitution, how much is penalties. I think we can do that for you.
Okay,
and this
yeah, I'd like
includes the
that
Royal
breakout.
Farms case.
The first number that you gave is your year-to-date for the value of restitution and penalties?
Correct. That's as of yesterday. It was $49,659.60.
All right,
And we
so-
can do the breakdown for you.
That's significantly below the target here. The
It is.
target here is 350,000.
It is, yeah. It is.
Why are we
Is that because
so
we're
below
halfway
that
through the
target?
year, or-
I think, well, I'm not sure if that's because we're halfway through the year or not, but, and I don't have an answer, but I will get an answer for you as to why it's that low.
Yeah.
Why it's that far off the mark.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we've got that clear, that she's. good.
Yeah, so a breakout of, given the circumstance, I'd like to know about FY 20, 21, and 22.
Right.
Okay.
That would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Sure.
A parsing out of penalties and,
Fines.
restitution, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
yes.
Paid to victims for all 3 of those years, and I'm interested to know an explanation as to how we're we're at 1/7 of the target for the fiscal year.
Okay.
So,
We will provide
yeah.
that.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you. Super important. Thanks for helping us out with that.
I have one more for Chris.
Yeah, I have one too. So real quick, because we've got our next session. Go ahead.
Sorry, why is there a metric for number of law enforcement recommendations adopted if there's no authority to ensure compliance with recommendations? How is that measuring anything that's germane to?
You know, Councilman, you know, I'm not sure why that's a measure. I think that some of the measures are ones that are sort of historic, that are not as useful as others, and I agree. We can make the recommendations, but it's not necessarily that they're going to be adopted. But
I'm going to ask Chairman Costello. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to bother you. Do we have like a central repository of where we're noting bad performance metrics throughout the budget, things to be reevaluated or changed for subsequent years?
I think we've been mentioning it along the way as requests, but it hasn't been broken out. Is that
So we haven't done that, Councilman Dorsey. It's been an ongoing conversation with BBMR, as you recall from the first year I started chairing the committee back in 17. I think that with the upcoming changes to the authority that the council has, these next few months are really going to provide a good opportunity to have a meaningful conversation with BBMR. What I would say is if there's performance measures that you're concerned with, and I have many of them too, right? My main gripe has been we measure quantity versus quality, right? So for example, and I'm just making one up that's hypothetical, that may not even be a performance measure, but for the towing and safety division, we might say, something that you're familiar with, we might say just volume of cars that are, well, actually, a better example is 311. Number of calls received. And it's like, in my mind, calls received is your inherent job as a 311 call operator, right? Versus the amount of time that it takes to get through a call, or the percentage of calls in which, you know, there has not, follow-up was not necessary, things of that nature. So what I would say, Councilman, is please take note of that. I would urge our colleagues to do the same. And once we get through this year's budget, I would be happy to have a conversation offline with our colleagues and even consider having, I'm not committing to it, but consider having a hearing or at least, smaller discussions in groups of 3 or 4 council members to talk through that and come up with a list. And then we need to sit down with BBMR. The important thing to note about these performance measures, and Mara might scoff at me a little bit for this on behalf of her boss, Bob, is that BBMR really drives the performance measures, right? The agencies are explaining to BBMR what it is that they do on a daily basis, but it's essentially BBMR who and again, this all stems up the org chart, and ultimately it's the mayor at the end of the day, right? But it's BBMR that's doing those, and I think that we have input that is valuable. I don't want to say that we should control it, because I feel like that's overstepping our lines as a legislative body, but I do believe we have meaningful input that we can provide that should be provided in concert with the agency, with BBMR.
Yeah, as I've asked the question here, and thinking about the responses that we've gotten, BBMR has more or less said we're putting in the performance metrics that the agencies give us. Like, BBMR is putting it on the agencies. It would make a lot of sense for us to just say to the agencies, why don't you submit to us, the committee, what metrics you think make sense to measure you on, and then for us to have a conversation about what those are or should be. In this case, if you think that this is a bad metric, and I think it's a bad metric, you should tell us what 5 metrics you want to be measured on.
So let me close out here so I can extract myself from this conversation. Yep. I'm more than happy to have this conversation, and I will commit to have this conversation, let's say, by mid-July. Yep. And we can figure it out from there. I do want to one note, Ms. Moore, we're coming up on time limit here. We're 5 minutes past. So if everyone
I'm done.
Perfect. Everyone else good?
I have one more question, so just quickly. And thanks for that discussion, because I have some ideas on the indicators.
Mike,
Yep. So the Commission on Civil Rights is tasked with enforcing the Home Act, and I'm curious how that's going.
I am not certain.
Just if you've gotten any complaints, because we do have a nonprofit that's working on actually doing their investigations, but wasn't sure if you'd gotten any complaints yet.
I don't think we've gotten any complaints that we need to follow up on, but I can ask both Danielle Burton and Lisa Kelly if we've gotten any complaints.
Yeah, that would be helpful. And how many?
All righty.
That would be super. Okay. Anything
right.
else real quick? Thank you,
you
Director.
very much.
Really appreciate all of your work. It's really amazing. So thank you so much. Really game-changing for our city. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'll turn it over to Councilwoman Porter.
Thank you. We're going to be taking a 5-minute recess to transition to the Office of Minority Women in Business Development. So this hearing is in recess for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.